The following interview is being conducted as part of the Price of Freedom project by the Madison County Military Heritage Commission to inform our community of the sacrifices made by those in the military on battlefields around the world. We wish to thank the Huntsville School System and the ETV Broadcast Center for their help in presenting this Military Heritage Program. Hello everyone, I'm Tom Cunningham. Welcome to our program. Today we'll be talking with U.S. Army veteran Don Harp. Don served 26 years in Army aviation and as a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, received the Silver Star, our nation's third highest award for valor on the battlefield. He is also the recipient of an Air Medal with Valor and the Purple Heart for wounds received during combat. Don was inducted into the Madison County Military Hall of Heroes in 2017. Welcome, Don. Pleasure to see you, sir. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. Yeah. Tell us a little about yourself. Now, you're an Okie, right? Born in Oklahoma?
Born in Pawhuska, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I see.
And my family was oil field, so we moved all over. I ended up residing in Odessa, Texas for all of my school years.
Yeah. Have brothers and sisters?
I got one sister, as a matter of fact. She's my older sister.
I see,
so
yeah.
She's, as a matter of fact, visiting this week, so.
Yeah. Good. So you're the baby boy. Yeah.
I am the baby of the family, and I expect to be, treated that way by it.
Of course.
Never did work, but I tried my darndest.
Was your dad in the military?
My dad was not. Matter of fact, during World War II, he was a pipe fitter, so he was had a heart murmur and he never even came in the military.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have uncles or
I had one uncle
that served?
I had one uncle that was in the Philippines in the 1st Cav Division in World War II, and I think that was about the only one that actually went into combat.
So when you were growing up, Don, did you envision maybe going into the military, or was that like on the back of your mind somewhere? Or?
Well, sort of kind of back in the days of the draft, you were either going to go or maybe you lucked out and didn't go. So I knew I would eventually come in probably, but I didn't.
Yeah. Draft kind of makes up your mind, right?
It does, but I was married and going to college when all that happened. So
where were you going to college?
I was going to Odessa Junior College in my hometown.
Yeah.
But I was assistant manager of a department store, freshly married, and I made the mistake of failing English. And so the draft board said, you really need to go take a physical for us. So I got to go do that.
Now you wanted, when you were contacted by the draft board and you had thoughts going through your mind, you thought about maybe becoming a gunner, right? That was on your mind, right?
I was watching TV after I'd taken this physical, and they said, well, you're going to come in. I'm going, oh, okay. I'm watching TV, and this flight of helicopters comes in, landing. Here's this guy who's sitting on his rear end shooting a machine gun at things, and I'm going, I think I can do that. That looks a lot better than walking. So I went down to the recruiter and asked him about it, and he said, take this test. I said, okay. And he said, I need you to go to Abilene and take a test. So I went to Abilene, and I took a test. And then he said, I need to fly you to Dallas to go in front of a board of officers. I'm going, this is an awful lot of stuff.
You had to be a gunner, right?
Gunner, And so I went and took that, and I came back, and he said, congratulations, you're going to flight school.
Wow. And you really hadn't thought about that too much, had you?
No, but when he said, you can either go to school here for a year, and then you can go maybe to Vietnam. Notice the maybe in there. And, be a warrant officer and you'd make a lot more money and you'd get flight pay. And I said, sure, I'll do that. That was the first lie I ever got told. Anyway, so the day that I got my draft notice, 2 days before I was to get on the bus to go to the induction center to be sent to Fort Polk for basic training.
Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Fort Polk, Louisiana. So that's basically all that transpired with that. So I watched my draft board representative and my recruiter arguing outside the bus as I drove off. I don't know
You'll
who
always
got
have
credit.
that image.
Yeah, I don't know who got credit for me, but somebody did.
But you never had any thoughts of being a helicopter pilot or being a pilot?
Well, I didn't think I was smart enough.
Yeah, really.
So, but
well, obviously you were. Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they were taking just about anybody that could walk and chew bubble gum at that time. So.
Tell us about training down in Fort Polk, Don. What was it like?
Fort Polk is a place that I'd rather not ever remember or ever go back to. I've passed through there several times, but I've usually went through with blinders on and kept driving as fast as I could. It was, what can you say about Fort Polk other than it was hot, ugly, and there was a whole lot of guys who didn't know any more than I did going through there.
And you went through like in summertime, or is that what you?
I went through I came in April.
Okay.
So it was starting to get.
And how long was training? How many weeks?
I think basic training back in those days was about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then that 10 days leave between basic training and flight school that I was supposed to get or was promised faithfully by my recruiter turned into get on the bus, you're going to Fort Walters, Texas.
Didn't quite materialize.
Didn't quite materialize. So then we went to Fort Walters, which is a fun place to go to.
Let's see.
And
that's in Texas. Right?
that's in Texas,
yes.
right outside of Dallas.
Well, tell us about that training. What was that like?
That actually was probably some of the most interesting and toughest times I have ever spent in my entire life. You get up, you get harassed from daylight till dawn. I got to go out and stand in front of a pole, a telephone pole, and practice my saluting once for about 2 hours straight because I didn't do it right for the TAC ops officer. And
a learning experience.
Oh, a learning experience. And we buried a dead fly because a fellow aviator died in my cubicle. So me and my cubicle mate had to go out and dig a 6 by 6 by 3 foot hole so that we could bury the fellow aviator and have the proper or appropriate burial ceremony. So I think it's a little rougher probably than basic training in flight school is now.
Yeah. But they're trying to weed out those that
well, they did they did a real good job. We started 300 in the class, which is a whole lot of folks.
Yeah.
And we got it down to 199. And I actually, when I got to Fort Rucker, because you go from Walters to Rucker. When I got to Fort Rucker, I busted out in basic instruments and had to come back in. So I actually got set back for a class. But out of that, I think there was only like 95 in my graduating class. So they weed out a whole lot of people real quickly.
At that time, Don, did you feel like you're getting into it? Hey, I think I can do this. You know,
oh,
yeah. What were your thoughts then about, like, I'm going to be a helicopter pilot. I can do this, right?
Yeah, your ego gets a little big. It was exciting. It was a lot of fun, and you get a thrill out of flying. Even when you're being constantly harassed and told how dumb you are and you really need to improve and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Because back in those days, the old philosophy of teaching isn't like it is today. Back then it was fear, sarcasm, and ridicule will get you through flight school. All this other stuff won't. So,
what kind of aircraft? What was your first aircraft that you flew?
My first aircraft was an HoH-23D, the Raven. It's a Hiller.
Okay, now that's not a jet engine, right?
Oh, heavens, no. It's a recip. You got a motorcycle throttle.
That's the way you control it, everything.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Very, very touchy, and it was, and you really learn a lot flying something like that, and you know forgiveness.
Yeah. What was that first flight like? I mean, was it? I'm sure it was quite exhilarating.
It was, and I didn't realize that a piece of mechanical equipment could do some of that stuff that we did in the first flight. It was truly enjoyable.
Did you get chewed out in the air by the instructor, possibly? Like, hey, do this, do that.
Several times. Yeah. Matter of fact, I can't remember a day I didn't do something wrong. So. It was
As
fun.
we said before, it was a learning experience.
It was a learning experience.
Yeah. All right, so you're at Rucker, and how long were you there?
Flight school total from start to finish is a better way to put it, and I was there basically 13 months because of that one little screw up in training.
I see, yeah.
And then I actually got a 25-day leave after that.
Really?
Yeah. I got to go home and, let's see, I got my wings, bars, divorce papers, and orders of Vietnam all on the same day.
Goodness gracious.
Yes, it was a wonderful.
That was a big day.
Oh, it was a great day. Actually, it was a great day because I've got my lovely wife now, so life is great.
Fantastic. Yeah. So you receive leave, and after you report back, you go straight to Vietnam?
Straight to Vietnam.
Right? All right, tell us about that experience. Right? As first, going over and so forth, and where did you go and where are you stationed?
Well, that was one of the other little things I loved. I have a little black cloud that follows me around through my entire military career of total screwed up. I received orders to go to the Deans. It's a lift company in Saigon, and I thought, boy, this is going to be great. Going to go fly Hueys and fly in the Deans. But we got to Benoit, and we were getting off the bus, and there's a sergeant with a 101st patch on one side and a sergeant with the 1st Cav patch on the other. And as a helicopter pilot got off, that pilot on that side, or that sergeant on that side, would grab a guy and pull him over. And when I got off, the guy from the 1st Cav grabbed me and pulled me over. And I said, I got orders to the Deans. He said, you're going to Cav.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
No ifs,
right?
ands, or buts. So we spent, I think, enough time to in process all the poor ground pounders. Nobody else had to go through some kind of course out there, and I was told that was pretty rough, but we didn't have to do that. We got the life of luxury. We got about 3 days of in processing, put on a helicopter, and I was sent to Tain In.
Mm. Now, what part of the country is that in?
That's in 3 Corps.
Okay.
Tain In is I'd love to have seen it in peacetime. It was a beautiful city. The Cowdai Temple was beautiful. I got to see it from the air a lot, but never got to see it on the ground.
That's pretty close to Saigon, is that right?
Yeah, it's about 60,
area?
70 miles from Saigon, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really pretty, other than the bomb craters all around it.
Yeah.
So, and Tain In was a very big base camp. It had the 1st Brigade of the Cav. I'm trying to think, I think it was part of the 25th there. Is a very big logistical base type of thing. And,
you were flying Hueys at that time?
Well, yeah. I went to headquarters and headquarters company, 1st Brigade. They have an aviation platoon, and back in that old T&E, the aviation platoon had like 5 or 6 Hueys and about 8 OH-6s. The OH-6s were set up as White Scouts or ash and trash birds. So you start off as a Huey co-pilot, and you would go out and learn the AO and all the tactical stuff. That
AO
you
isn't explain that.
That's an area of operation.
Okay, area of operation, right.
So we'd go out, you'd fly command and control for the infantry battalions that are assigned to the brigade. Each one of the infantry battalions had a Huey assigned to it with its own crew that would go out and support that one battalion each day. The brigade commander had his own aircraft, and he would fly it. Then the OH-6s, as I said, were to run missions and drop off supplies, mail, things of that nature throughout, plus the scout teams. We had supposed to have 2 scout teams, but the entire time I was there, we never could mount 2 scout teams. So I went out and I got my area orientation in the UH-1, and then I was given the opportunity to get an advanced aircraft transition, which is another one of those little black cloud things should be forming over here jobs.
Yeah.
And they told me it would be to do low-level reconnaissance. So I said, sure, I'll do it. So I got an OH-6 transition. That was the first time I found out that aircraft engines could fail and metal parts going through the aircraft could quit.
And while you're up in the air, of course.
While you're up in the air.
Yeah.
That's during the transition, you understand.
Right. Sure, yeah.
I had one engine failure and had a suspicious piece of metal go through the fuel control on the second one in about a 10-day period.
It doesn't start off well for you.
No, it doesn't start off well. It's a great life if you don't weaken.
Right.
But anyway, so I started flying scouts probably about the 20th of June. And
This is 1969.
This is 1969.
Right.
So on July 10th of 1969, I became the senior scout lead and won the Silver Star.
Wow.
So I flew scouts until September or October, and since it was strictly volunteer, I asked them if I could leave, and then they said, do you want to go to another unit? And I said, I think I'd like to try medevac because they don't, get shot at.
Quite as often.
Yeah, that's a lie.
Yeah.
So I went out and flew with those guys for one day and immediately came back and said, I like to fly command and control. Those guys are crazy. So those guys deserve anything that they get. So I went to flying command and control, and I ended up my tour as the brigade commander's pilot. But I had to rotate through all of the other battalions before I became their brigade. And
how long did you stay over there? You just had one tour?
just one tour. I actually spent the full 12 months, 30 days of that in the hospital because I was wounded, but I wasn't wounded bad enough to leave. And they needed pilots to invade Cambodia in May of 70.
I see.
So, and the brigade commander kind of said, you can stay if you want to. I said, okay, I will, figuring I would outlast everybody and just derose straight out of the hospital, but it didn't work.
I see, yeah. Now, you flew mainly the Hueys? Is that, or did you fly anything, any other kind? You mentioned the other, what was the other?
OH-6 Alpha is what I...
That's the only 2 aircraft you flew there,
right.
Those types, yeah.
Yeah, the OH-6 Alpha, we flew those in what we call a white team configuration, which is 2 loaches low, which you have a minigun on the left side and a door gunner in the right rear seat. And you went out and followed each other around like a gun team and hovered up and down trails and did weird things like that.
Yeah.
So,
We'll get back to some of the action in just a moment, but let's talk a little about, Don, about when you had some downtime. I don't know how often that was, but what could you guys do for relaxation? I mean, could you put up a sheet or something and have a movie, you know?
Well, you could watch a movie. You could go to the club and eat something besides the mess hall food and things of that nature. We had a small club there in our area.
How was the food, Don?
If you like roast beef and rice, it was great.
Yeah, a lot of rice.
A lot of rice, a lot of roast beef. Occasionally we got something different than that, but
Yeah.
we ate just like everybody else in Vietnam did.
Yeah.
When we were in the field, we ate MREs or C rations, just like.
Now, was it C rations and MREs, or MREs were coming in at that time? Or?
MREs and LERPs and C rations. We had all three over there. The MREs were just, I think they were just getting ready to come in, or I may be confusing that with Korea in that time frame.
Yeah, yeah.
But the LERPs were the little brown bag of dried, dehydrated food that if you ate a bite of that, you better have a lot of water. They were really good. They were tasty.
Yeah.
The C rations were probably from World War II days.
Probably,
I'm not 100%
Korea.
sure. Yeah, Korea.
Sure was. I'm sure you formed lasting friendships in the service. Do you still stay in contact with some of the guys maybe that you served with in Vietnam?
Actually, I sent it with a lot of folks as far as the military is concerned. Most of the friends I run around with are previous military. But the unit that I served in, the headquarters company, 1st Brigade, actually has a website that everybody goes to and talks. I'm not much of a talker on the email, but
have you been to any conventions or anything?
Not with that outfit. Not with that outfit, but of course I belong to the North Alabama Vietnam Helicopters Association. I go to that meeting every month, and we do a lot of socializing with that group.
Yeah.
So.
But you guys you have a couple of planes out there, but you actually don't do any flying. You just sit around and talk and tell stories and that sort of thing, right?
Well, yeah, that group actually takes it and sits on a static display, and we do a lot of schools and kids and things like that.
You do some good work, I've met some of the guys that's in that group, and they're fantastic people. Were you married at that time?
No, I was single because I got divorced.
I see. Okay. Yeah. All right. It's always nice to receive a letter from home, wasn't it? I mean, it took a little. We didn't have, email and that sort of thing that back then. But wasn't it nice to receive a letter from home?
Oh, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I usually got something from my mother or my sister, but that was basically about it because, like I said, I didn't have time to meet any girls to have any relationships with or any of that other nature. So as far as the mail was concerned, it was either a bill. Or something from my mom, and you couldn't really say, "Hi, Mom, I just got shot at today," sort of thing.
Did you get a box, like with a cake that's been mashed up and cookies?
Heavens,
just crumbs, that. But that was so surprising when in your service like that and you receive a box. I mean, it's eaten. It doesn't matter if it's crumbs or broken up. All the guys gather around, and it's eaten.
Oh, heaven! Yeah. And people used to pack it in popcorn. And that was probably the best part of some of the packages I saw was the popcorn packing.
Yeah. So now, after Vietnam, you were shipped back to the States, and I think you were a training pilot at that time, right?
Actually, that was hilarious. I was woken up one morning on one of my very seldom days off, and the flight ops clerk said, "They need you to send in a dream sheet." And I said, "Okay. I don't want to have anything to do with Vietnam. I don't want to have anything to do with flying ever again, and I want to be stationed west of the Mississippi." So I became a UH-1 instructor pilot, teaching solely Vietnamese how to fly UH-1s in Savannah, Georgia, which I think is about as far opposite as you could possibly get from what I asked for.
Wow.
That was also the last dream sheet I ever submitted.
Wow. So they would go back and to in-country, and then they would fly the helicopters.
I did that for 2 years, and I had some very good students.
Yeah.
They were wonderful people.
Don, let's go back to when you received the 2 of Valor Awards for your service in Vietnam. I want you to tell us about the battles. You mentioned just briefly, but tell us more about the battles and combat action that led to you receiving those awards.
Well, the Silver Star I was the wingman of the lead, and we received a call stopping us from a daylight recon about a CH-54 had received fire from an LZ.
Now that's a troop carrying.
CH-54 is a heavy cargo helicopter.
Okay, cargo.
It's a flying crane.
Right.
And since they were pretty special, they didn't like people to shoot at that. So They said a guy came out of a tree line, waved a flag, and shot at him. And I'm going, I'd be willing to bet there's more than one guy there. But anyway, I was the dumb number 2 guy, and I wasn't supposed to make any comments. So we headed off in that direction and was flying with a gentleman named Pokey Howard. And Pokey was the lead. He's the guy who taught me into flying scouts. So we came in, and as we started in, he started receiving fire, and I pulled the trigger on my minigun, and nothing happened. So I went heads into the cockpit, flipping switches and trying to get things to work, and it wouldn't work. So I broke out. And to caveat this so that it all comes kind of together, the hybrid that we were using that day was a Rash Fact. That's an Air Force Fact flying an OV-10. And he was...
OV-10, that's a observation.
Yes, it's an aircraft. It's a twin-engine Grumman high fixed wing, yeah. And unarmed other than Willie Pete smoke grenades or smoke rockets. So I asked him if he knew where Pokey was because I couldn't find him because I could still support Pokey with my door gunner. But like I said, I had veered off because I'd stuck my head down inside the cockpit. And he said, he's over at the smoke. So I flew over to where he was, and we were receiving fire the whole way, and the door gunner's M60 blew the flash suppressor and the barrel apart on his M60. So now we're down to his duper, an M49 single-shot grenade launcher, and we flew in. I found Pokey. I hovered down, shot my way into the LZ, and picked him up. He came running out with a pistol, waving at me. What the heck am I supposed to do? I don't know it. But
he was proud to see you, though.
Oh, he climbed in the airplane. He said, I think Williams is dead, and you're going to have to let him go. So when I looked over at the aircraft, and there was no way anyone could have survived what was going on. And we were constantly being shot at. And so we pulled out and headed back to Tain as fast as we could. And about that time, the other OH-6 exploded. And the Rash Fact started directing us in. And it was a pretty rough, rocky ride because I had really beat up the blades on that thing, tried to get in and out. So that was basically
But you made it back. You shot up a little bit. And
the airplane didn't fly again for a very long time.
A lot of repair work on it.
A lot of repair work, but miraculously, none of the bullets hit any of us in the aircraft.
Wow.
Plexiglass, tail boom, fuel cell, but not us.
That black cloud was away from you at
Yeah.
time. Yeah. It was not hovering by, or close by anyway. Now, you also received an Air Medal with Valor. Tell us about that. That was a little bit later?
Oh, that was quite a bit later. That's when I had quit flying scouts, and I was flying command and control. And you have to go through an aircraft commander check ride before you're checked out to fly with the brigade and battalion commanders, because you're talking directly to them, and sometimes you end up moving troops and all the other good stuff that's associated with maneuvers on the ground.
Right.
So this was my check ride. I had a W3IP sitting in the other seat, and I'm talking to the battalion commander and troops on the ground and the crew to coordinate everything that was going on. So we had troops in contact, and we were trying to get smoke grenades into them. We couldn't get a lift bird in because the fire was so we came in the first time, and I told the colonel, said, I want to kick these out. I said, okay, being a case of smoke grenades. So I said, when I come in, I'm going to decelerate the aircraft, level it out. We're going to come to a stop for about a second, and then I'm going to accelerate. And when you see the aircraft start to nose down a little bit, you kick it out because we're over the spot that it needs to be dropped. He said, okay. So the first time we came in, I leveled out. He didn't kick. The second time he came around, I said, kick it out. And he said, huh. And the third time we came around, I had the crew chief kick out a case, and I kicked out a case. By this time, the aircraft is not exactly responding like it should be because it had a couple of holes in it. So we got back, and about 4 months later, I found out I got an Air Medal for V for doing that.
Wow. You found out quite a bit later, but one of those oddities of war, right?
It was strange.
Yeah.
It was unusual.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that happens.
Yeah.
But I passed my check ride.
Yeah.
So.
Now, Don, you were wounded. Was this along about this time that you were wounded? Tell us about that experience. You received the Purple Heart for that
I had
experience.
graduated up to where I was the brigade commander's pilot. And we were going out to an LZ Flashner that they were just building, and there wasn't much water or anything else like that available. And one of the crew chiefs, or I think the crew chief, had just gotten a Hulk comic book. So we landed, the brigade commander said, shut her down, we'll be having lunch here. And there wasn't a lot of perimeter out, and there wasn't a whole lot of other defenses available. So I'm kind of leery about it, but we did it anyway, because if you're told to do so, you do so. That's part of your job. And I sent the door gunner in, Sam Dumas, and he went into the mess hall and got us a case of sea rations and came back out to the aircraft. And he was asking people what they wanted, and I was sitting up in the left seat, which was my position in the aircraft, and reading a Hulk comic book, and we got mortared.
Wow.
Everybody in the crew Sam was killed. Co-pilot got shrapnel in his feet, and the crew chief, I think, got wounded in the arm. And as I was jumping out of the aircraft, I took a whole load of shrapnel in the calf of my left leg. And it wasn't anything exciting or heroic. It was just I happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, at the right time.
Fred had been your crew chief for quite a while.
Sam had been, yeah, he was actually the door gunner, but he was one of the most strack troops I ever met in my life.
Wow. But you were able to fly the helicopter out?
Oh, no.
Oh, it was damaged too bad.
It was damaged too bad for that. Okay. Matter of fact, we picked up Sam and ran over to a logistics aircraft that had just landed and had those guys evacuate us. Matter of fact, the co-pilot decided to go inside the LZ to see if he could get a corpsman to look at him. So we flew back to Tain in and went into 45th Surge, I think was a hospital. It was a must unit, one of those big tents or blow-up tents.
Did you lose a lot of blood for that injury and a lot of shrapnel, or you?
Yeah, I had about 30 pieces of shrapnel in me. So they cut it all out. They laid me on and debrided my leg. That's why I stayed in the hospital so long, because I spent almost 30 days in the hospital.
You have any lingering effects?
Yeah, basically the muscles in that leg, they're still okay. I stayed in the Army, so it didn't hurt that, but it's one of those things that you just know it's there. It's a pretty good sized scar, but it's all better. And I got to go on R&R before I left Vietnam, and I looked great in Australia with that wound on the beach, so it was okay.
Relax, R&R, all right. Don, some say it was their upbringing, others say it was a tough sergeant during boot camp. Who or what helped prepare you to take the actions that you did in combat?
I guess all of them.
Yeah. All combined, yeah. Yeah.
Dad said, if you got a job, do it.
Yeah. And follow through with it. Yeah. Do the best you can. I want you to describe what it's like to serve in a war zone. The thoughts you have of possibly being killed or wounded during battle. I mean, is that constantly on your mind, huh?
It's always possible.
Yeah.
But can you let it bother you? No.
Yeah.
You just get up, you go eat breakfast, you go to work, you go eat lunch, you go to supper, you come home and go to bed. It's just one day at a time, one step at a time.
Follow your training. Training's always in the back of your mind, I guess. You got a job to do and you got to do it.
That's it.
Yeah. I know people often wonder, is it okay to be afraid or scared during combat? Tell us about that.
I was scared from the day I got off the bus.
And that's a good thing, I guess.
Oh, I guess it is. In fact, I'm still, don't walk up behind me and clap your hands real loud, because I will lay on the floor for you.
You might be carrying a weapon, and it wouldn't be a good idea, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that. But
you won't go that quite.
Wouldn't go that far.
How do you feel, Don, when people call you a hero? When they learn about what you did in combat? How does that make you feel?
It doesn't. Because I'm not.
Yeah. You don't look at yourself that way. Yeah. But others may, and I'm sure they do, and I do, of course. But I ask all the veterans that, and they'll pause, you know, and you know what quite to say. They don't look at themselves that way, and I assume that you feel the same way.
Well, I once, you know, if I'm superhuman, I should be able to jump up and put my pants on with both legs at one time, and I can't do that. So I figure I'm just like everybody else.
You're a human being, right? Just like the rest of them.
That's it.
But you had a job to do, and you did it, and you performed well. I'm sure you're that. Some of our veterans talk about having to make adjustments once they return from a war zone. Was it tough for you to get back in the routine of life back home when you came back? You know, you said that you're training South Vietnamese pilots. I mean, was it an adjustment time there, a period?
It was, because we weren't well liked back then.
I see. Yeah.
But I tell you what, I think I stayed sane because I stayed in. Because I could always talk to somebody about what I'd seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that helped you. Yeah, it helped having people that you served with and are knowledgeable of what you did in combat and what you did in service.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it meant something, I'm sure. Do you often wonder, would you do it all over again?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No hesitation. Now, you've served during a war, and through the years, I'm sure you've seen a few war movies. Do you think war is depicted accurately in most of the movies or TV shows?
No.
Have you seen about helicopter pilots and that sort of thing?
Oh, I haven't got over the muffler on Airwolves yet, so.
But no, you just don't. It's not believable to you as an actual combat.
I'm sure some of it probably is, and I've seen things that look like that, but it ain't real. It's not. I spent a whole day getting shot at and didn't know it. I didn't know it till I got home, and there were holes in it. And if you look at war movies, those guys are taking rounds that are ripping pieces and all that other stuff off, but it doesn't seem like it's that real to me.
Yeah.
So some of it's a good laugh, as a matter of fact.
Now, you alluded to it a moment ago. You weren't. A lot of our servicemen came back during that period of time. They weren't greeted as they should have been. There were a lot of protests about the Vietnam War. Did you encounter any of the protests, and if so, how did it make you feel?
Well, the only one that was really anywhere close to serious was when we got off the plane at Travis Air Force Base, and we all got buses or taxis or whatever to San Francisco to leave to go home. And I was still on a cane. Even though I had been put back on flight status, I still couldn't walk very well.
Right.
So I was leaning on the cane, and the guy came up and grabbed me and twisted me and held up something silver in my face. And anyway, he ended up on the floor somehow. I'm not sure exactly how, but he did.
It happened.
He slipped or something on the floor. So the police actually came and escorted him out because he had apparently spray painted other people. And that's what he was trying to do, was spray paint soldiers.
Yeah. This was in San Francisco.
This was in San Francisco Airport.
Yeah. Don, tell us about your family. You and your wife, Linda, I think have been married now, what, 40-something years?
46 years.
46 years, outstanding.
Maybe 47.
And you were married after you got back to the States? Is that right? How long?
Yeah. I came back and started teaching there, and I met this young lady, and I thought she was pretty special, and started talking to her, and we were out walking one night, and I told her, never marry a soldier. They're too flaky to live with. And I found out then that you never tell my wife she can't do anything, because she basically forced me to marry her. You know, so.
Fortunately, she didn't heed your advice, right?
No, she just didn't heed it at all. She still doesn't.
Okay, now you've been married 46 years, and I think you have a son and
I have a son and a daughter.
Yeah.
Daughter's the oldest. Both of them live here in Huntsville.
Yeah, fantastic, yeah.
And one's a computer draftsman, and she works for a nonprofit agency. And both are married happily. And I have a 14-year-old granddaughter by my daughter, and I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old by my son. All good-looking, beautiful, blue-eyed, blonde girls.
Outstanding, yeah.
Yeah, Going to start going on dates with them here pretty soon. I figure a couple of rows back.
Escorting them?
Yeah.
Grandpa is going to do a little escorting
Yeah, they're going to have rich boyfriends to pay because I eat big.
You have a hearty appetite.
I
right?
do.
Now, before we talk about how you and Linda wound up in Huntsville, let's go back. You served 26 years in the Army. Talk about, now after Savannah, I understand, gosh, you were stationed in Germany, I think 2 tours in Korea.
3 tours
talk
in
about
Korea.
the places that you were stationed at following your service in Vietnam.
Oh, heavens. Well, we got Hunter in Savannah, Georgia. Then I went to Korea. Got a Chinook transition so I would get away from being shot at. And then we went to, let's see, after that, went to Korea, which I flew Hueys in Korea. I haven't figured that part out. Then from Korea, we went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Fort Sill, Oklahoma to Germany. Germany to Fort Campbell to Korea to Hunter. Retired at Hunter. Got called back to active duty in '90. Went to Fort Rucker and taught for 4 years in Chinook course. And then I went to Korea for my final year, then came back to Korea to retire again. So that was basically it. I spent a lot of TDY time in Honduras and other countries like that because in the Chinook you travel a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Being in the military, you have to, as you mentioned, move around a lot, different duty stations. Talk about the effect that can have on a family, Don.
Oh, well, my son was born in Germany. My daughter was born in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So when you start talking about the differences of locations in place, excuse me, when you're home and you're in the status I'm in now where we're all close together and they start talking and the family gets together and start talking about vacations, and I say, I don't remember that. And they will look at me and say, because you weren't there.
You're pulling duty somewhere. You're
Yep, it was either
flight status and so forth.
Of course, Korea was always a single tour.
Right.
You were always unaccompanied in Korea. And Honduras and places like that were TDYs that were 6 weeks to 6 months. So you were always alone there. And for some reason, the Army likes for you to spend at least a week a month in the field. I haven't figured that part out.
It still crosses your mind occasionally about
Yeah, it does.
why that is. Yeah.
Matter of fact, when we go camping, it's in a travel trailer. It has nothing to do with a tent, ever.
Yeah. So you got out of service, and who did you work for? A contractor? What?
Well, I started out. I went to work for a company in Florida. That was a C-12 maintenance contract. And of all things, I ended up back in Korea as the Asian regional manager. So I traveled. I had sites in Japan, Indonesia, Thailand, and Australia that I had to travel to, but that was also unaccompanied. So I was alone or separated from my wife other than the time that I could come back to the States on vacation for 2 years doing that. And then I came back and I got a job with LME, which is a company that actually employs me now, working for PM Air Warrior, which is aviation life support equipment. And I worked for those guys both as a contractor, and then they told me I needed to go government, so I went government. Then I retired from that, and I'm now a part-time contractor working back at the same desk with the same computer and the same phone number I had when I started in 2000.
Complete circle almost.
Complete circle, yeah.
Now LME, they had a part of the company was located here in Huntsville. Is that
It
how
still
you
is,
and
yes.
Linda were able to? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they actually hired me and brought me up from Fort Rucker because I had retired at Fort Rucker again.
I
So
see. Yeah. How long have you been here now?
Since 2000.
Yeah. And plan on staying with us? You're not just visiting, right? I mean,
I'm going to be here forever. They're going to plant me someplace in my backyard, I hope. So
Huntsville is a lot of veterans settled in this area.
Oh, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah. Don, what advice would you give to young people who may be considering a career in the military? Well, you served 26 years.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure you can give some good advice.
Keep your nose clean, and it's a perfect career. If you find a job that you can like, you'll find it. If you don't like your boss, wait 3 years and it'll change. If you've got a good MOS and you keep your nose clean, you'll make your rank and you'll have a good, comfortable retirement and career. And if they don't stop changing the medical benefits, life will be great.
Make a few changes here and there,
Yeah,
some adjustments, so to speak. Yeah.
But I enjoyed it, and I would recommend it for anybody that But if you like a life of drugs and alcohol, don't come in. They don't need you. So
Good advice.
It's not a place for rehab.
Now, did you say that you're full-time with LME now, or just
I'm part-time.
Part-time work. Yeah. So you involved with, I'm sure, with a lot of honeydew projects and that sort of thing, but what other things are you involved with?
I don't know my wife. Honeydews are about all I have time
You mentioned,
for.
you know, the helicopter group that you...
Yeah, we do static displays with those folks, and that's basically it. Other than that, we camp and do things of that nature. So we just have a normal, quiet life.
Yeah. Well, Linda didn't get to escort you to some of those places. You mentioned, you know, Korea and Australia and everything. Do you think you'll have the opportunity maybe to go back someday and take your wife? And
I wouldn't mind taking her to Australia.
Yeah.
She did come to Korea on my first tour.
I see.
And she spent 30 days there, and I don't think she really wants to ever go back because that was back in the 70s, and Korea has improved a lot since 1970.
I see, yeah. Well, did she work also?
She was a full charge bookkeeper for several years. She worked for a law firm in Savannah, and she worked for a construction company in Enterprise, Alabama while we were there.
I see, yeah.
So.
Don, I want you to, this will be our last question. I want you to talk about what it was like to be inducted in the Hall of Heroes, which you were inducted last year, 2017. What was that experience like for you?
Humbling. That's a great crowd of people.
Yeah.
Some pretty impressive folks.
Yeah. A lot of the veterans say that it's an experience like they've never,
That's a fact.
Never had before, you know, and an appreciation, I guess you might say.
That's a fact.
Yeah. So that'll stay in your memory, I'm sure, for
Oh, yes, it will.
Yeah,
Yes, it will.
Don, I'd like to say that we thank you for participating in our Oral History interview series and allowing us to preserve your military experience for the people of this community. And thank you, sir, for your service to our country.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Very good interview. Thank you, sir. Now, if you'd like more information regarding this interview or any interview in our Military Heritage series, please visit the Madison County Military Heritage Commission website at mcmhc.org. I'm Tom Kennemer. Thank you for being with us.